My name is Ethan. I'm 29 years old, and for the past year, I've been living with a secret that both excites and destroys me at the same time. I never thought I would be this man, the kind of man who finds himself falling in love with two women at once. And not just love in a shallow, fleeting sense. I mean the kind of love that feels real, deep, and life-changing. The kind of love that makes you wake up in the middle of the night, unable to breathe, because your heart is split in two. The two women couldn't be more different. The first is Sophia. She's 26.com, composed, and she has this quiet strength that makes me feel grounded every time I'm around her. With Sophia, I feel safe. I feel understood. She has this way of listening, not just hearing, but really listening, that makes me believe every word I say matters. When I'm with her, I feel like I've found my anchor in the chaos of life. Then there's Isabella. She's 25, and everything about her radiates energy and passion. She's wild in the best sense always, chasing new adventures, dragging me into moments I would have never imagined for myself. She challenges me, excites me, makes me feel alive in a way that's intoxicating. With her, I'm not just existing in burning. And here's the impossible truth. I love them both. It all started so simply, almost innocently. I met Sophia first. She was a colleague in a project I was managing, and from the beginning, she impressed me with her intelligence and her calm determination. We would spend hours working late, and eventually our conversations moved beyond the boundaries of work. She told me about her family, her childhood dreams, and the little fears she rarely admitted to anyone. And I found myself opening up in ways I hadn't in years. Sophia gave me balance. Then, months later, through mutual friends, I met Isabella at a birthday party. She was the kind of woman who could walk into a room and make the whole atmosphere shift. She had this sparkle in her eyes, this laugh that was impossible to ignore. I told myself I wouldn't get too close after all. I was already falling for Sophia. But somehow, Isabella's fire pulled me in. At first, it was just harmless fun. We went hiking, we took spontaneous road trips, we stayed up until dawn talking about life, music, and dreams. But one night, under the stars, when she leaned against me and whispered, "Ethan, I don't want this night to end," something in me broke. I realized I was already far too deep. I told myself I could manage it, that I could somehow love Sophia and love Isabella without crossing any lines, without breaking anyone's heart. But that was a lie I fed myself to escape the guilt. Because the truth was, both of them loved me too. Sophia, with her soft smile and patient heart, would send me messages in the middle of the day just to ask how I was holding up. She believed in me in ways I didn't even believe in myself. Isabella, on the other hand, made me feel like the center of her universe, like every moment we shared was an adventure she never wanted to end, and me. I was standing in the middle of two worlds unsteady, one wild and I couldn't choose. The nights became the hardest. Lying awake, I would imagine a life with Sophia, peaceful, stable, filled with the kind of love that grows quietly but deeply. Then I would imagine a life with Isabella, passionate, unpredictable, a whirlwind that carried me to places I'd never dared to dream. And every time I would feel this crushing guilt. I wasn't a teenager playing with emotions. I was a grown man, 29 years old, and the last thing I wanted was to hurt either of them. But what do you do when your heart refuses to choose? One evening, I was having coffee with Sophia. She looked at me with those calm eyes and said softly, "Ethan, I feel like you've been distant lately. Is something wrong?" I froze. My chest tightened, and I wanted to tell her everything, the truth, the whole messy truth. But I couldn't. Instead, I shook my head, smiled weakly, and said, "No, I've just been stressed with work." Later that same week, Isabella grabbed my hand during a walk and said, "I don't know what it is, Ethan, but sometimes it feels like you're hiding a part of yourself from me." And again, I lied. "I'm just tired, Bella. Don't worry about it." But deep down, I knew the storm was coming. I couldn't keep walking this line forever. Sooner or later, the truth would surface, and when it did, it would hurt maybe not just me, but both of them. And possibly their friendship too. That thought alone kept me awake most nights. And so here I am, a man who thought he understood love, standing at the crossroads of two very different hearts, Sephieth Anchor, Isabella Thay Fire, and Metin in between, loving them both, terrified of losing everything. This is where my story begins. Asterisk, asterisk. Life has a cruel way of testing us when we least expect it. For weeks, I convinced myself that I could somehow balance everything, that I could continue to love Sophia and Isabella without either of them finding out the truth. I told myself I was strong enough to carry this weight, that I could handle the guilt if it meant keeping them both close. But lies, no matter how carefully woven, always unravel. At first it wasn't so obvious. I managed my time like a man juggling knives dangerously, but with just enough skill to avoid disaster. Weekdays often belonged to Sophia. We would meet after work, sometimes cooking dinner together in her apartment. She loved when I chopped vegetables while she prepared sauces, and then we would eat while talking about everything from philosophy to childhood memories. Those evenings were calm, warm, and filled with a sense of home. But weekends, those were Isabella's. She would text me late at night on Friday, "Pack a bag. We're going somewhere tomorrow." I never knew where until she pulled me into her car with that mischievous smile. One weekend it was a cabin in the woods. Another, it was a coastal town hours away. With her, time felt like a blur, like every second mattered more than the last dot to lives. To loves. And me, the man caught in the middle, praying neither world would collide. But slowly, the cracks began to show. One evening, while Sophia was setting the table, my phone buzzed. I didn't think much of it, till I glanced down and saw Isabella's name flashing across the screen with the message, "I miss you already. Last night was amazing. When can I see you again?" My chest tightened. Panic surged through me. I quickly turned the phone face down, but not before Sophia noticed my hesitation. "Who was that?" she asked, her voice calm but sharp enough to cut through the room. I forced a smile. "Just a colleague. Work never really stops, you know." She looked at me for a long moment, as if weighing whether to believe me. Finally, she nodded and went back to setting the table. But I could feel it, the doubt, the suspicion, planting its first seed. That night, lying beside her, I couldn't sleep. Guilt wrapped around me like chains, heavier than ever before. For the first time, I questioned everything. Was I truly in love with both, or was I just too weak to let one go? Days later, Isabella pressed me to. We were lying in her bed after another whirlwind weekend, and she traced circles on my chest with her finger. "Ethan," she whispered, "sometimes I feel like I don't have all of you, like you're holding back. Tell me I'm wrong." I wanted to tell her she wasn't wrong. I wanted to confess everything, but when I opened my mouth, the words stuck in my throat. Instead, I kissed her forehead and whispered, You're everything to me, Bella. Don't ever doubt that. But I doubted. Every second of every day. The truth is, I loved them both differently. With Sophia, I imagined a future marriage, kids, stability. She represented the man I thought I wanted to become, responsible, dependable, strong. With Isabella, I lived in the present. She reminded me that life was fleeting and precious, that passion wasn't something to be tamed but embraced. She represented the man I secretly wanted to remain, free, adventurous, alive, and so. My heart remained split in two. The first collision, the inevitable, happened sooner than I expected. It was a Sunday afternoon when Isabella suggested we go to a new cafe downtown. I didn't think much of it until we walked inside and I saw Sophia sitting at a corner table, reading a book. My stomach dropped. My palms turned cold. Sophia looked up, her eyes landing on me first, then drifting to Isabella, her gaze lingering just long enough to piece together what was happening. Isabella, oblivious, pulled me toward the counter and began ordering drinks. For those few seconds, time froze. Sophia's face was unreadable calm, as always, but with an edge of something I'd never seen before. Betrayal, hurt, disbelief. When Isabella finally noticed Sophia, she smiled politely and said, "Hi, I'm Isabella. You must be a friend of Ethan's." I thought my heart might stop. Sophia closed her book slowly, placed it on the table, and stood up. She looked directly at me. Her voice steady but piercing. "Yes, you could say that." And then she walked out. Isabella turned to me, confused. "Do you know her?" I swallowed hard, forcing the words past my lips. "Yes, that's Sophia." Her smile faded instantly. She didn't say anything. Not at first. But her silence was louder than any scream could have been. The aftermath that night, everything fell apart. Sophia called me. Her voice was quiet, almost too calm. "Ethan, how long?" I tried to speak, to explain, but the truth was simple, and it cut deeper than any excuse I could give. "Months," I whispered. There was silence on the other end. Then, finally, she said, "I thought I knew you," and the line went dead. Hours later, Isabella confronted me. Her anger was fire-wild, uncontainable. "You've been with her this whole time. Do you realize what you've done? To me, to her." Tears burned in her eyes, but she refused to let them fall. She shoved my chest hard enough to make me stumble back. "You don't get to tell me you love me, Ethan. Not when you've been lying every step of the way." I reached for her, desperate, but she pulled away. "Don't," she said sharply. "Don't touch me. Don't say another word." And just like that, both worlds collapsed. Alone with the truth for days, I walked through life like a ghost. Work became meaningless. Food tasted like nothing. I barely slept, because every time I closed my eyes, I saw Sophia's disappointed face and Isabella's broken one. The guilt was unbearable. I thought I could love two people at once, but in trying to keep both, I ended up losing everything. One evening, I sat in my apartment, staring at the empty walls, replaying every moment in my head. How did it come to this? When did love turn into betrayal? And the question that haunted me most was this: did I ever truly deserve either of them? The days that followed felt like years. Silence became my constant companion. No calls, no texts, no laughter from Sophia or Isabella. The two women who once filled my life with color were gone, and all that remained was a dull, gray emptiness. I had always imagined heartbreak as a sharp pain, something that struck quickly and faded over time. But this wasn't sharp, was heavy, suffocating, like carrying a stone in my chest that grew heavier with every breath. I replayed everything in my head, over and over again. The way Sophia's eyes hardened the moment she saw Isabella in that cafe. The way Isabella's voice cracked when she shouted, "You lied to me." The way both of them walked away, leaving me stranded between two shattered worlds. For the first time in my adult life, I couldn't run from the truth. I had hurt them both. One night, unable to bear the silence anymore, I sat at my desk and began to write. Not letters I would send, but letters I needed to write. The first was to Sophia. You were my anchor, the calm in my storm. I never meant to betray the trust you gave me so freely. I lied because I was afraid of losing you, afraid of admitting that I was weak. You deserved a man who could give you his whole heart, not one who split it in two. I am sorry for every tear, every doubt, every wound my cowardice has caused you. Then I wrote to Isabella. You made me feel alive in a way I never thought possible. With you, I felt the fire of passion, the thrill of life. But I held you with one hand while clinging to another life with the other. That wasn't fair to you. You deserved someone fearless, someone who would leap with you into the unknown. I wanted to be that man. I thought I could be, but I wasn't. When I finished, I stared at the pages until my eyes blurred. The words didn't fix anything. They didn't erase the pain or undo the damage. But for the first time, I stopped lying to them. To myself, I admitted what I had refused to face. I wanted both because I was too afraid to choose. Weeks later, fate tested me again. I was at the grocery store, grabbing something quick after work. When I saw her, Sophia, she was standing in the produce aisle. Her hair pulled back, her posture as graceful as ever. My chest tightened. Part of me wanted to run, to avoid another confrontation. But another part of me knew this was a chancer, painful, necessary chance. I walked up slowly. Sophia, she turned. Her expression was neutral, guarded. Ethan, her voice wasn't warm, but it wasn't filled with anger either. That almost hurt more. I'm sorry, I said softly. For everything, she sighed, looking away. Do you know what the hardest part was? It wasn't just that you loved someone else. It was that you lied to me. You looked me in the eyes and told me I had nothing to worry about, when I already knew something was wrong. Her words cut deep, but I didn't interrupt. You could have been honest, she continued. I might not have forgiven you, but at least I would have respected you. Instead, you left me questioning my own instincts, doubting myself. I felt my throat tighten. I know, and you're right. I was selfish. I thought I could protect both of you by keeping the truth hidden, but all I did was destroy everything. I don't expect forgiveness, Sophia. I just needed you to know. I did love you. I still do. She looked at me then, her eyes softening just a little. Love isn't enough, Ethan. Not without honesty. And with that, she walked past me, leaving me standing there, holding nothing but the weight of her truth. If seeing Sophia was like facing the storm I had caused, seeing Isabella was like walking through its aftermath. It happened weeks later at a mutual friend's gathering. I didn't expect her to be there, but when I saw her across the room, my heart nearly stopped. She looked radiant, as always, But there was a distance in her eyes that hadn't been there before. When our eyes met, she hesitated, then gave me the faintest nod. It wasn't an invitation, but it wasn't rejection either. I approached slowly. "Bella, Ethan," she said coolly, sipping her drink. I struggled for words. "I just wanted to say I'm sorry. For everything. You didn't deserve," she cut me off. "You're right. I didn't." Her bluntness stung, but she continued. "But I also won't pretend I didn't love you. You made me feel things I didn't think I could feel. And maybe that's why it hurts so much. Because I gave you my whole heart, while you were dividing yours." I nodded, swallowing hard. "I know, and I'll regret that for the rest of my life." She looked at me then, really looked at me. "You know what the saddest part is, Ethan? If you had chosen, really chosen, I think either one of us could have made you happy. But you didn't, and now none of us are happy." Her words were a knife, but they were true. Before she walked away, she added softly, "I hope one day you figure out who you are and what you want. Because until then, you'll keep hurting people." That night, I went home and sat in silence for hours. Sophia's words echoed in one ear. Love isn't enough without honesty. Isabella's in the other. If you had chosen, we could have been happy. And I realized, painfully, that love alone doesn't make us good people. Love doesn't excuse lies, or indecision, or cowardice. I had loved 2 women, truly, deeply. But in the end, my inability to choose, my fear of loss, had cost me both. And now, I was left with the only person I had been running from all along, myself. Months have passed since then. And though the wounds haven't fully healed, I've started to understand the lesson hidden in the wreckage. Love isn't about holding on to as many hearts as you can. It's about choosing one, fully, bravely, and giving them everything. Without fear. Without half-truths. Without running, Sophia found her peace. Isabella found her fire again. And I'm still searching. But maybe that's okay. Maybe this is the part of the journey I was meant to face. Because sometimes, the most important love story isn't the one we share with someone else. It's the one we finally learn to have with ourselves. And that, perhaps, is where redemption begins. Time is a strange thing. When you're in love, it rushes forward like a river in spring, fast, unstoppable, filled with life. But when you're heartbroken, it drags like heavy chains. Each day longer than the last dot. In the weeks after losing Sophia and Isabella, I felt like time itself had betrayed me. Each sunrise was a reminder of the emptiness. Each night a reminder of the silence where their voices used to be. But life, indifferent as always, moved forward. And eventually I realized that I had 2 choices: drown in regret, or learn how to swim again. One evening, after staring at myself in the mirror for what felt like an hour, I finally admitted the truth. I couldn't fix this on my own. My guilt, my indecision, my constant cycle of what ifs it was eating me alive. So I made a choice. I found a therapist. Her name was Dr. Reynolds, and she was in her mid-40s with sharp eyes and a calm, steady voice. From the first session, she asked me the question I had been running from all along. "Ethan, why did you need both of them?" At first, I tried to explain it away. I said Sophia gave me stability, and Isabella gave me passion. I said I loved them differently, but equally. But Dr. Reynolds didn't let me hide behind those words. "Love," she said, is not about collecting. It's about committing. What you wanted was not love, was wholeness. You were looking for two halves of yourself in two different women. Her words hit me like a blow. For weeks, we unpacked everything: my fear of commitment, my constant need for validation, my inability to face loss. She made me see that I hadn't just betrayed Sophia and Isabelle, I had betrayed myself. And slowly, piece by piece, I started to rebuild. Months later, I saw Sophia again, this time at a bookstore. She was laughing with a friend, her eyes bright in a way I hadn't seen in months. When she noticed me, there was no anger, no pain, just a distant kindness, like someone remembering a chapter of their life they had already finished reading. We spoke briefly. I told her I hoped she was well. She smiled and said, "I am." That smile told me everything I needed to know. She had moved on. She was healing. And though it stung, it also gave me hope that maybe one day I could feel that way too. As for Isabella, we crossed paths at a mutual friend's wedding. She looked stunning in a crimson dress, her laughter filling the air. She greeted me politely but without warmth. There was no space for conversation, but as she danced with someone else, I realized that her fire, the one that had once pulled me in, was still alive, and it was no longer mine to hold. That realization hurt, but it also freed me. For the first time in years, I began to focus on myself, not on who I could love or who could love me, but on who I actually was when I stood alone. I picked up old hobbies I had abandoned. I started running again, feeling the air fill my lungs, the ground steady beneath my feet. I began writing, pouring my thoughts into journals instead of hiding them behind lies. I traveled not with Isabella's impulsiveness, not with Sophia's careful planning, but on my own terms. A solo trip to the mountains taught me how to sit with silence, how to breathe without needing someone else's voice to fill the air. And slowly, I began to heal. If there's one truth I've learned from all of this, it's that love isn't about avoiding loneliness. It's not about using one person to fill the gaps left by another. Love demands courage, the courage to choose, the courage to be honest, the courage to let go when necessary. Sophia once told me, "Love isn't enough without honesty." Isabella told me, "If you had chosen, we could have been happy." They were both right. I had tried to live two lives, and in the process, I lost both. But maybe that loss was necessary. Maybe I had to break in order to rebuild into someone who could truly love, not half, but fully, completely. Farlessly. It's been nearly a year since the cafe incident, the day everything came crashing down. I'm not the same man I was then. I'm still flawed, still learning, but I'm no longer running from the truth. Sometimes I wonder if I'll ever find love again. But if I do, I know this: I'll choose with honesty. I'll love with both feet planted firmly, not one in two different worlds. And if love never comes, then at least I've learned how to love the person I once feared facing the most myself. Because sometimes the greatest love story isn't about choosing between two people. It's about finally choosing yourself. The days that followed were like walking on glass. Every step I took, every word I said, carried the weight of what I had been hiding. I had fallen in love with two women, both remarkable, both irreplaceable in their own ways. Yet the walls of my double life were closing in, pressing against me until I could hardly breathe. With Emma, life was calm and steady. She was gentle, nurturing, the kind of woman who made every space feel like home. Her laugh was soft, her touch grounding. She had always been there for me, even in moments when I didn't deserve it. With Sophia, life was a flame. She was adventurous, electric, unpredictable in a way that both thrilled and terrified me. She pushed me beyond my limits, reminding me of parts of myself I had forgotten, the dreamer, the risk, the boy who wanted to feel alive. How could I choose between safety and passion, between a harbor and a storm? Each morning, I woke up with a knot in my stomach, afraid that today might be the day everything unraveled. I had been careful, painstakingly so, but love has a way of slipping through cracks, showing itself in glances, in tone, in the way a person lights up around someone they care about, and cracks were starting to form. It began when Emma asked me, almost casually, "Do you ever feel like you're distracted lately?" I froze, distracted. The word lingered between us like smoke. "Work has been overwhelming," I lied. "And I haven't been sleeping well." She nodded, offering me a sympathetic smile. She wanted to believe me, and for a moment, I wanted to believe myself too. But later that night, as I lay awake beside her, I felt the truth pounding in my chest. I was distracted, but not by work. I was distracted by Sophia's laughter, still echoing in my head. By the way she had touched my arm the night before, her eyes lingering just a little too long. By the way my heart had leaped when she whispered, "You make me feel seen." The danger of a secret is that it grows heavier the longer you carry it. Every time I met Sophia, I promised myself it would be the last. Every time I kissed her, I swore I would end things, and yet I didn't. She knew. She had to know. She never asked me directly about Emma, but sometimes her questions cut close. "Do you ever think about where this is going? Would you ever choose me if you had to?" Her words were daggers wrapped in velvet. She deserved answers, but all I could offer were half-truths. Words that sounded like promises but weren't. Meanwhile, Emma grew warmer, more attentive, as if she sensed a distance forming and wanted to close it. She would surprise me with small things, my favorite meal, a note slipped into my jacket pocket. Each gesture was a reminder of the life we had built, the trust I was betraying. The contrast between them was tearing me apart. It happened one evening when I least expected it. Emma had invited Sophia over. They were friends. After all, that was how this tangled web had begun. I walked into the living room to find them laughing together, sharing a bottle of wine. Their ease with each other, both beautiful and unbearable. And then it happened. A look. Just a glance. But it was enough. Emma caught it the way my eyes lingered on Sophia, the softness in my expression that I couldn't mask. Her smile faltered. For a heartbeat the room went silent. Then Emma stood, her voice steady but trembling at the edges. "Alex, is there something you want to tell me?" My blood turned to ice. Sophia's face drained of color. The truth was no longer hidden, it was clawing its way into the open, demanding to be faced. I tried to speak, but the words caught in my throat. My silence was the loudest confession of all. Emma's eyes filled with tears, and Sophia looked down, unable to meet her gaze in that moment. Everything I had been juggling, the love, the lies, the longing, came crashing down. The two women I loved stood before me, broken by the realization that I had not been honest with either of them. Emma whispered, almost too softly to hear. "I trusted you," Sophia added, her voice laced with both pain and anger, "and I thought I was different. I thought I mattered enough for you to choose. And just like that, the world I had built, fragile and flawed, collapsed into pieces now, sitting alone. I replay that night over and over. Could I have avoided it? Should I have chosen earlier, before feelings grew too deep? Or was I doomed the moment I let myself fall for both of them? Love is not always simple. Sometimes it is messy, selfish, destructive. I loved Emma. I loved Sophia. But in trying to keep them both, I lost them both. And the worst part, I don't know if I regret loving them, or if I only regret being caught. That night, when the truth came out, Alex sat alone in the suffocating silence of his apartment. Emma had retreated to her room, tears still staining her face. Sophia had left without saying goodbye, and there he was, lone face to face with the emptiness he had created. The apartment, once warm and alive, now felt unbearably cold. Memories played like a film in reverse. Quiet evenings with Emma resting in his arms, thrilling nights of adventure with Sophia, their laughter, their touches. Now each memory cut like a blade, beautiful yet painful. Asterisk in the days that followed, Emma no longer looked at Alex the same way. She grew quiet, her replies short, sometimes avoiding his gaze altogether. Inside Alex, guilt swelled like a storm. He wanted to apologize, to explain, to beg her to stay. But all he received in return was silence. A wall that grew taller every day. One evening, Emma finally spoke. "Alex, do you know what hurts the most? It's not just that you loved someone else. It's that you hid it. You let me believe I was enough. I don't even recognize you anymore." Her words fell like a final sentence. Alex knew trust, once broken, is almost impossible to repair. Asterisk Sophia, too, disappeared from his life. No replies to his texts, no answers to his calls. He even went to the cafe where they used to meet, hoping to see her, but she never came. She had been fire-wild, intoxicating. But that fire had burned too bright, and in one night it consumed itself. Her last words echoed in his mind. "If you truly loved, you would have chosen. But you didn't, and because of that, I can never be the only one." Asterisk weeks turned into months. Alex began to realize the most painful part wasn't losing Emma or Sophia, was losing himself. The confident, steady man he once was had vanished, leaving behind someone unrecognizable, trapped in regret. In his journal, he wrote, "Love isn't possession. Love is choice. And I refuse to choose. My greed left me with nothing but solitude." Months later, Emma moved out. On the day she left, Alex stood by the doorway, unable to say anything. She carried only a small suitcase, her back straight, her steps certain. She never looked back. Sophia faded too like summer wind. No messages, no farewell. Just silence. Alex returned to work, to routines, but he knew he wasn't the same man anymore. Every corner of the city reminded him of them. Every familiar song reopened wounds. But over time, the pain softened, leaving only scars, and scars, though permanent, no longer bled. They simply reminded him. Asterisk, he had learned the hardest truths. Love cannot be held in both hands at once. A divided heart gives no one wholeness. And above all, honesty is the greatest gift we can give to those we love, then when the truth is cruel. Asterisk, one evening. As rain drizzled over the city, Alex walked with no umbrella. The cold drops slid across his face, But instead of sadness, he felt something like a peace. He no longer had Emma. He no longer had Sophia. But he carried with him a lesson etched deep into his soul. And one day, if love came knocking again, he knew he would not repeat his mistakes. Somewhere, in the quiet of the future, he hoped he might find forgiveness not from Emma, not from Sophia, but from himself. Asterisk.